Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the newly released evidence, digital subpoenas, and audio recordings surrounding the tragic death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells. It's a case with a lot of moving parts, from a mother demanding answers from tech giants, to audio clips sparking massive internet conspiracy theories, and a newly surfaced video that could completely change the trajectory of this investigation. We're going to break down every critical development right now. Here's how we're going to break this down today. First, the disappearance on Horn Island. Second, following the digital trail. Third, the boat video mystery. Fourth, deciphering that distress call. And finally, the forensics and the questions we still don't have answers to.
All right, part 1, the disappearance on Horn Island. Let's establish the basic facts.
So here is the huge central question hanging over this entire case. Did this young college football player tragically drown by accident? Or is there some kind of darker cover-up happening here? This is exactly what's driving all the public scrutiny right now, and it's the answer Nolan's family is desperately fighting for.
Let's look at the timeline. On July 4th, Nolan heads out to Horn Island, which is a barrier island off the Mississippi coast, with a group of friends to celebrate. But at some point that day, he just vanishes. He's reported missing that night, which kicks off a massive search effort. Then, tragically, 2 days later, on July 6th, his body is found washed ashore. This immediately set off alarm bells for the public, and frankly, official channels haven't really answered those questions yet.
Moving on to part 2, following the digital trail, and specifically, the subpoenas.
Understandably frustrated by the lack of official information, Nolan's mother, Christine, has taken matters into her own hands. She's filed massive subpoenas targeting 4 major tech companies: TikTok, Snapchat, WhatsApp, and Life360. By going through the Chancery Court of Jackson County, these legal orders are literally compelling these platforms to hand over a mountain of data.
To give you an idea of what we're talking about, just look at the intense legal language from the WhatsApp subpoena. They are casting an incredibly wide net. They're asking for all communications, IP addresses, photos, GPS data, timestamp logs, you name it, they want it. Retired Detective Matt Irvine pointed out that this is a really aggressive but pretty standard tactic used to figure out if anything was secretly deleted from Nolan's phone. Because, even if you delete an app or a message from your device, that data usually still lives on the provider's servers. It's a pretty powerful reminder that your digital footprint doesn't just vanish into thin air.
And here's exactly why they're going this route. According to reports, Kristen was using Life360 to track her son's phone, which was apparently with his friends at the time. But when they compared that Life360 location data with Snapchat data, reports suggest the two just didn't match. On top of that, there were rumors floating around that pictures or videos might have been wiped from his Snapchat. Now, one of Nolan's friends has come out and publicly stated that absolutely no one touched the phone and nothing was deleted. But instead of just taking their word for it, the family is using these subpoenas to let the digital forensics speak for themselves.
That brings us to part 3, the boat video mystery. Where exactly was Nolan?
For a while, there was this widespread fear and a lot of online rumors that Nolan was actually on the boat heading back to the mainland when things went south, and maybe something happened to him in the water out there. But a newly surfaced video really flips that narrative. It clearly shows the friends on their boat as it's actively taking on water, apparently from a failing bilge pump. And if you watch it, there is absolutely no sign of Nolan on board during this really chaotic moment.
This new video evidence actually lines up perfectly with the official documentation. A report from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources notes that witnesses, specifically Nolan's friends, claimed that when they left the island around 4:30, Nolan was hanging out with an unknown female and decided to stay behind. Law enforcement still needs to verify exactly who saw him last, but this video firmly shifts the focus of the investigation right back to Horn Island itself.
Okay, part 4, deciphering the distress call. Let's look at the audio analysis.
So, the Department of Marine Resources released the actual distress call from when the friends were frantically asking for a tow because their boat was sinking. Almost immediately, the internet just exploded with conspiracy theories. An entertainment outlet put out this enhanced version of the audio, and people started claiming that in the distorted background noise, you could hear friends saying things like, "Is he dead? Nolan, wake up, check his chest." It's honestly a prime example of how fast an unchecked theory can spread like wildfire on social media.
But we really need to cut through all that noise and look at the actual science here. Forensic audio expert Robert Freed stepped in and analyzed the transcripts of both the original audio and that newly enhanced version. His conclusion? The audio is just way too distorted to support any of those internet theories. Yes, you can hear some commotion, maybe some curse words, but Freed definitively stated that the software couldn't pick up those specific phrases, and they absolutely do not appear anywhere in his forensic transcription.
Taking this a step further into behavioral analysis, retired detective Matt Irvine pointed out that staging a fake distress call just to cover up a crime is a hallmark of, well, premeditated, cold-blooded murder. That takes a level of criminal sophistication that a group of 19-year-olds almost certainly doesn't possess. Plus, keeping a conspiracy of silence among a half-dozen teenagers for nearly a month without a single person cracking? Irvine notes that's incredibly unlikely, even for hardened organized crime rings.
Which leads us to Part 5, Forensics and Unanswered Questions. Let's talk about the autopsy and the broader context of all this. So the family actually commissioned an independent second autopsy, but the result came back as undetermined. The pathologist ran into some really tough complications. First off, decomposition makes it extremely difficult to identify trauma or figure out exactly how a drowning might have happened. Second, there is this totally unexplained red discoloration on the back of Nolan's head. Medical experts are actually debating whether that's just from decomposition or if it was a blunt force injury before he died. And on top of all that, the independent examiner noted that key portions of Nolan's neck were apparently kept by the state medical examiner during the very first autopsy. Because of that missing evidence, the second doctor simply couldn't rule out neck trauma or foul play for sure.
Adding even more complexity to the mix, preliminary reports claim that witnesses saw Nolan drinking heavily with his friends. But investigators are strongly warning people to hold off and wait for the official toxicology reports. Detective Irvin cautions that we really have to avoid victim blaming based on unverified rumors. I mean, plenty of young people drink on the 4th of July and make it home perfectly fine. The toxicology report will tell us exactly what was in his system, but honestly, it still won't answer the biggest question of how he actually ended up in the water.
So why is the family pushing so incredibly hard on their own, hiring high-profile attorneys, doing their own autopsies, demanding app data? Well, it all comes down to a deep-rooted historical distrust of local law enforcement in this specific region of Mississippi.
Detective Irvine brings up a really vital point for context here. There is a deeply painful history in Mississippi when it comes to the unresolved deaths of young black men. He points to historical precedents like Emmett Till and the murdered civil rights workers, events that happened within just a few hours' drive of where Nolan was found. When you look at a history where law enforcement has sometimes been indifferent or even complicit, it makes total sense why a black family in Mississippi is demanding complete transparency. They aren't just going to accept the initial official narrative without a thorough, independent investigation.
Right now, authorities are reportedly interviewing over 60 witnesses and getting ready to present everything to a grand jury. So as we sit here waiting for those crucial toxicology results and the grand jury proceedings, we're left with one really provocative question. When all the digital footprints are traced and all the medical testing is finally complete, what will the science ultimately prove happened to Nolan Wells on Horn Island?